In a small, rainy village in England, there lived a cheerful cobbler named Harold. He was famous not just for mending shoes, but for his quick wit and knack for finding clever solutions to everyday problems. One day, a royal messenger arrived at Harold's humble shop, carrying a scroll with the king's royal seal. The messenger looked rather grim. "Harold the cobbler?" he asked. "That's me," Harold replied, brushing dust from his apron. "The king summons you," the messenger declared. "He has a riddle that no one in the court has been able to solve. If you succeed, you will be rewarded handsomely. If you fail—" The messenger didn't finish, but his grim expression said enough. Harold scratched his head. "Well, I'm better with leather than riddles," he muttered to himself. "But I do love a good challenge." Little did he know, the king's riddle would test more than just his wit. It would challenge his very livelihood. The next day, Harold stood nervously before the king. The royal court was packed with nobles, all murmuring about how many scholars had already failed to solve the riddle. The king, a stern-looking man with a twinkle of mischief in his eye, addressed Harold. "Cobbler, you've been summoned because I hear you're clever. Here is the riddle. A treasure lies hidden within the palace walls. It is not gold, nor jewels, nor anything you can hold. Yet it is more valuable than all my riches combined." "What is it?" Harold frowned. He had expected something tricky, but not this abstract. The court fell silent, and all eyes were on him. He glanced around the grand hall, taking in the tall windows, the ornate tapestries, and the worried faces of the nobles. Everyone seemed tense, like the riddle had cast a shadow over the palace. Then Harold's cobbler instincts kicked in. When things are falling apart, he thought, you start by looking for what's missing. "May I ask a question, Your Majesty?" Harold said, bowing politely. The king raised an eyebrow. "You may. Have you noticed that everyone here looks uneasy? Like they're waiting for something bad to happen?" The king nodded slowly. "And what does that have to do with the riddle?" "Well," Harold said, "if the treasure isn't something you can hold, maybe it's something you can feel. Maybe it's something that's missing right now." The court murmured, intrigued. Harold walked around the room, observing the tension in the air. "Your Majesty, I'd say the treasure is peace of mind. When everyone in the palace is on edge, it doesn't matter how much gold you have. True treasure is the calm that comes when things are in harmony." The king leaned back on his throne, stroking his beard. "Interesting answer, cobbler. But how would you restore this peace of mind you speak of?" Harold grinned. "That's simple. Your nobles are worrying because they're scared of failing you. Perhaps they just need to laugh, to remember that life isn't all riddles and stress." The king, intrigued by Harold's suggestion, ordered the court jester to perform. But instead of sitting back, Harold stepped in. "Your Majesty, with your permission, I'll share a joke from my shop," he said. The king nodded, and Harold began. "What do you call a shoe that's always happy?" "A jolly boot." The court erupted into laughter, not because the joke was particularly funny, but because Harold's delivery was so earnest and unpolished that it caught them off guard. Even the king chuckled. As the tension melted away, Harold turned to the king. "There you have it, sire. The treasure isn't tea, just peace of mind. It's knowing when to let go and laugh." The king smiled, rising from his throne. "Harold, you've solved my riddle and restored my court's spirit. Your reward is well deserved. What would you like?" Harold thought for a moment. "A steady supply of leather from my shop, and a promise that your court remembers this day." "Granted," the king declared.